But I was at a meeting in Baltimore in 2000, I think it was 2011, and at that meeting they had experts. It was when the USDCB was just beginning the process of writing the document that they wrote, Create a Clean Heart in Me, on pornography and its effect on the church and families and in society. And so that was a 4-day weekend. I was just kind of inundated with statistics and the effects that this has had on families. And so at that point, so I'll just share the two, I think, statistics that had the biggest impact on me was over 60% of divorces cite pornography use as a major contributing factor. Let's see, I'm not used to using PowerPoints. I usually just teach my students face-to-face, but so over 60% of divorces cite excessive use of pornography as a major contributing factor in the divorce. So that's something to note, the impact that this is having on families and on marriages. The other is that the average age of first exposure is 8 years old. That was shocking to me. I was teaching high school at the time. The year after that, I went down to grade school, started teaching 3rd grade. And so these are my children. And they really are very innocent and have no business being exposed to this kind of thing. Also, the type of pornography, what used to be considered pornography is now a public billboard or a Super Bowl halftime show. It's basically what used to be very shameful is now publicly unnoticed and very acceptable. The pornography that our children are being exposed to is incredibly deviant and violent and degrading. So you put all this together, and it's kind of a call to action for us as adults in the church. We need to be protecting our children. And so that's really where my passion has driven me as an IHM sister, concern for the family and especially for children and the formation of our youth. So since that time, I've been working on getting programs and all of that into our grade schools. And just now with our diocese, we have a task force. We have a task force for the diocese that was formed. We've been meeting about a year now. And we had St. Stephen's Sunday this past March. These presentations that I'm giving is part of that. In 2 weeks, June 13th and 14th, I invite you to come back if you're free. What I'm giving you today is a super concentrated version of what I will be giving on July 13th and 14th. It's 2 full days. And I'm more excited for that than I am for this presentation, simply because of my time limitations. I cannot put this in the context that I love for it to be in. And what I've discovered over the years as I've worked with this topic and formed people in pornography prevention and evangelization in the midst of a sexualized culture, my message is really bright and hopeful and life-giving and centered in the restorative power of love. That's the message. The dangers and the evil and the darkness of pornography is not the main message, and it can't be. If that's the main message, we get dragged down into the muck. If that's what we focus on, we will feel as if we're being overpowered. It's like this dark cloud that's just inevitable and all of that. And that's not the gospel message. That's not where Christ has ever been. That's not his message. It's not gospel-based. The gospel message is always full of light and hope and healing and love conquers. The light pierces the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. And that is the truth. So it takes a little while to give information, but also to put it in that context. So it's exciting for me that I get to speak about this in a very life-giving way, and I do about a 3-week unit on pornography recovery, education and recovery with the high schoolers that I teach at Cape and Mount Carmel. I'm working on packaging that in some way so that our other high schools can use that in their morality classes. I have lesson plans for the grade schools that's more along the line of prevention and early intervention to equip our children so that when, not if, but when they encounter this, they know what to do and it does less damage, and they have a loving adult to help them to, the relationship restores what's been damaged. Relationship has been damaged, and relationship also restores the damage. So So that's the hope, is to get our teachers and our schools on board, and our assistant superintendent, Dr. Jamie Finkeldijk, has been very key in helping our schools to get on board with this. So we'll talk about some of that today. Well, when I first got into this and I realized kind of the nature of the problem, and that we had to be talking about this even in the grade schools, and that parents need to be talking to their little children, not just teenagers or above, on this topic, I was very disheartened and didn't want to do this. And I called around. I wanted to get someone who was already addressing this and just get a packet from them and distribute that to our schools, and have someone else take care of it, and maybe I was the instrument to help that happen, but I didn't want to be in the middle of it. There's nothing out there. So there's nothing available for the schools to use to help our children. And I've talked to people. I was relating to Dr. Morse when she was saying, if there were something better out there than what we have, we would have tapped into that. We'd be using that instead. And I would love to steal someone else's lesson plans instead of developing them on my own. But it's not out there. So at the beginning, before I discovered how to bring light into this topic, I suffered a lot through facing this darkness and not really having a team to face it with me. My sisters were very helpful. But as far as like my research and looking at the ugly and what do we need to do with this beast, it was difficult. I was about to give up. I actually had told one of my sisters, I was like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'm strong enough. I think this is bigger than me. I don't think I have the spiritual strength to fight this. And I questioned whether I should be involved in this. And that night, another sister who had no idea how I was feeling, she said, I was just reading this, and she's an expert in St. Faustina. She was reading Faustina's diary. And she said, I read this, and I thought of you. And so she gave me this quote, and just out of the blue. And the quote was, I suddenly saw a crowd of children who seemed to be no older than 5 to 11 years of age. Keep in mind the average age for exposure is 8. When they saw me, they surrounded me and began to cry out, defend us from evil. I saw the distressed Lord Jesus. Jesus looked at me graciously and said, you are to defend them from evil. From that moment, I have been praying for children, but I feel that prayer is not enough. That really struck me to the heart when I read it. And then the next morning, our gospel for meditation was Matthew. It is not the will of your heavenly Father that one of these little ones be lost. So Jesus hit me really hard. Right when I was about to give up. And but along with this, it wasn't just, okay, sister, you're condemned to like wander in the mire and be in this darkness. Along with that, he also showed me the key, which is what I have shared with you, that the message is light. And so instead of looking so much at pornography and its dangers and statistics and failed marriages and stories and testimonies and all that, because you can get really caught up in that. And I think that's a danger with people who start getting into this to help others, is to you just keep looking at, I mean, we fall into that trap on the internet sometimes, right? And you just keep looking at stuff and it's not good for you, and we end up, oh, I just spent an hour and I feel gross, you know? It was that kind of thing. And so the message ended up being spread my light, spread the gospel. And so basically we have pornography as kind of the anti-gospel. Pornography is very, very much directly from the devil. It's his playground because of what it does. Pornography attacks relationships. It attacks our identity as beloved of the Father. I mean, you hear people who are, who are very much affected by pornography and are caught up in the trap. There's this, very much the addict mentality of, if people only knew who I really am. You know, a teenager, the mom and dad give him a compliment, and then he's like, and no matter what you say, if it's positive or negative, if it's positive, then it throws the teenager into despair because he's like, and you don't know what I was just doing in my bedroom 5 minutes ago. You have no idea. You think well of me because you don't really know me, who I am. Or if you say something negative, like, yeah, you think that negative and that's who I really am. And you don't even know the worst of it. Well, what do you hear the distortion of the mental block that we have, that we're Pornography is robbing us of our identity, where the person says, this is who I am. Well, it's not who you are, it's your behavior. We need to separate behavior from identity. But the devil, because this touches us pretty deep down, our sexuality is very deep, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, physically. It's very deep in our person. So because we're messing around with our sexuality, that's why it's very close to, we can mix that up with our identity, even though it's not our identity. So the devil loves pornography, loves it, and there's evidence that he's directly behind it. I mean, how else could it have taken off like wildfire the way it has? And the porn industry getting away with a lot of the stuff that they do should be, it is illegal. Like, it's federal law, child pornography and all of this, and they're getting away with it. And people are purchasing these things and all of that. The devil's behind it, and the way it ruins relationships too. Pornography is it's very private. It robs the person of relationship, and it robs the person of the ability to even see others in a healthy way. That robbing of human relationship also robs us of our relationship with our Heavenly Father, our ability to see it. Now, our Father in heaven still relates to us, but we are blind to that relationship. So in that sense, it robs us. So it doesn't really rob us of identity. It doesn't really rob us of our relationship, but it robs us of our ability to receive that, to be able to see it and receive it. I'm going to hand out this PowerPoint to you so that you can have this for your reference. So this is what I ended up feeling like after that. For those of you who are Lord of the Rings fans, I said, okay, fine, I'll do this. So pornography attacks relationship, identity. It attacks marriage and family life with over 60% of divorces thing. A famous quote from Lucia, the last living seer of Fatima. She said when she was talking with, she wrote a letter to the cardinal who was founding a John Paul II Institute for Marriage and Family in Rome. And she told him, the decisive battle between the Lord and the kingdom of Satan will be about marriage and the family. Do not be afraid, she added, because anyone who works for the sanctity of marriage and the family will always be fought and opposed in every way, because this is the decisive issue. And she's like, the devil is against marriage and family, because marriage and family is central to everything in the church and in society. But she ended by saying, however, Our Lady has already crushed his head. Okay, so very much light and hope, but also an acknowledgement that this is a very real battle that we're in. And so it's for the sake of family and the good of children and all of that I'm still involved in this. So what does it look like to be anti-porn in the classroom, in the family? Well, we want to emphasize the real over the virtual. And the virtual is easier. It's also fake. It's virtual, it's not real. So there's a program that I highly recommend. I'm trying to get this into our schools, and I think that once it starts, it'll catch like wildfire. I'm trying to get our schools to adopt this. It's called White Ribbon Week, and they have 4 different weeks. You do it on a rotating basis, so you can encourage this in your schools. It's cheap. I think it's $75 per program for the entire school. And so the first one that you can do is called Let's Get Real. And basically it's a whole week of just encouraging the students. The purpose is not to badmouth technology or to say we shouldn't have technology. The purpose is to help our children become more discerning users of technology. It's tech citizenship or digital citizenship, not just safety online. Right now we do safety online. It's law, Kansas law, that we have to tell children, don't give away private information if someone comes online wanting to meet with you or whatever. I mean, it's basically the stranger danger stuff, but it's online instead of in person. But this is more helping our children not to get swept away by media in an unhealthy way. So this week, Let's Get Real. The whole week, there's different activities every day, discussion points for the teachers to do with the kids. It can be used in conjunction with either Red Ribbon Week or Anti-Bullying Week because it's about relationships and treating each other well and all of that. So it doesn't, if a school is like, we don't want another week, I understand that. I taught grade school. They were all weeks all through the year. But it can be used in conjunction with one. But this, it's amazing. I know the woman personally who created this. She's a third grade teacher from Utah. There's nothing better out there. So each day of the week, they celebrate doing things that are real and seeing that as having more value than things that you experience on the computer. So that's this week. And then there's another week, it's called I've Got the Power. And this is, I have the power to choose what I look at and what effect it has on me. Our children are, by and large, not making choices when they're online. They're just following. They're being led instead of making decisions. This is something we need to look at. So that's this week. You could do any one of these weeks that you want to start with, but she has them on a 4-year rotation. That way, the students don't have the exact same thing every year, and you can continue to form them in use of media. This one is brain power, and this week is all about what effect does overuse of technology have on my brain? What effect does bad things in technology, what effect does that have on my brain? I'm going to protect my brain. Why should I protect my brain? How can I protect my brain? Making decisions because my brain is precious. That's what this week is all about, brain power. This one, be a media detective. This is all about this, the THINK, it's to think. That's each day has a different thing. So the T is it true? When I use the media, I'm going to look at, is this true? How do I know if it's true? H, how did it get my attention? Instead of just being sucked into it, I'm going to be aware of what they're doing to get my attention and make a decision about whether or not I'm going to follow that which gets my attention. I is I can choose. Instead of just following, I make a decision about whether or not I will click, whether or not I will spend more time. N for the think is, what are they not telling me? Is there something they're hiding? Is there something they're misrepresenting? And then the K is to know who and why. Who made this media and why? What are they trying? What were they trying to do? Should I trust them? Should I be following their lead? All right, so that's, and with each of these, there's activities. They're cheap. That's key with our grade schools, is we have limited budgets and all of that. And she knows all this. She's a teacher. And a lot of these activities can be parent-led. A lot of them can be done during lunchtime with parents. So there are discussion points that can be done during class time. It can replace social studies time. So it's not as if you have to add extra time into the day. There's a lot. So this, I have a handout for you that has the information for it. It's just whiteribbonweek.org. Is what you would go on. So I have a handout that has all the resources I reference in this talk will all be there, and samples are here for you to look at everything I'm going to talk about today. Like I said, I'm going to go through this really fast, but if you come, or encourage someone to come from your parish perhaps on July 13th, June 13th and 14th in 2 weeks. I'll put this all in context, and we'll talk about what this looks like to really have a program in our grade schools. This is the brochure for White Ribbon Week. You're welcome to come up and look at any of this during the break. But these are all, you can't take anything on this table, you can just look. So emphasizing the real over the virtual, emphasizing strong unconditional relationships, being mindful and thinking instead of just following, instead of just passively accepting and taking in whatever is given to us. This includes even like billboards, magazine fronts, things that we see on ads, commercials, previews, all of that, you know, being mindful of it instead of just passively letting it. Because what happens is if we passively just sit there and accept and don't do anything, don't make any decisions about what's going in, guess what? It comes in and it stays in. We're passively receiving garbage and it's filling us up. And it is having an effect on us. And so this mindfulness, you know, when I see something, I turn on my thinking part of the brain and I reject it. I make a decision to reject it. That is a sexualized billboard. And I resent that they're trying to sexualize me. And I'll tell you, we don't have internet at home. I mean, our mother house does for taking care of business and all of that, but I live in a local convent by Cape and where I teach. Our convent doesn't have internet. At school, I'm very limited in what I can do because of time, and I use it just for teaching. We don't have cable TV. no Netflix, nothing like that. We don't have cell phones. We have 2 cell phones that are only dial phones for when we travel, and we share those in the convent. You only take them if you're going on a trip. So I have very, very limited tech use, and I will tell you, I have suffered. I am more sexualized now than what I was when I entered the convent, because it's out there everywhere. You know, the suggested YouTube videos. If I'm getting something educational to look up for class or something, I mean, the images pop up, right? We need to be mindful of this, even no matter who you are. If you are not in your home with no technology at all, ever, no TV, no screen ever, and you never leave your home, that's the only way you're going to be safe from the sexualized society. And that's not even really safe, right? Because then we're robbed of relationship and all of that. Safeguarding the home, I'll talk about that, and a spiritually enriched society. So all of these are positive things, positive and empowering and fully living. That's what we're about. We're not so much about like looking at the monster and backing away from it, but more looking at the life, and that strengthens us so that this monster of pornography can't take hold of us and bring us down. That's what we're looking at in our families, in our schools, in society. So what does a strong unconditional relationship look like in our home? This is what our children need. Children need to know that God is faithful because you are faithful. That's how they know God is faithful, because you are faithful to them. Children need to know that God is merciful because you are merciful. You make this real to them. That's God's intention for parents, grandparents, adults in authority, caring adults. That's the role that you have in the life of everyone who relates to you in any way. God is protective because you are protected. God is safe because you are safe. God delights in them because you delight in them. And this goes back to the gospel principle. If you cannot love the brother you see, how can you love the God you cannot see? God intends for human relationships to be a stepping stone to his relationship, to help make his relationship with us real. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's powerful. And in homes and classrooms, this is what I try to model in my classroom with my students, no matter what age I'm teaching, with the people I'm talking to. Whenever I'm talking to someone, they have my full attention. I'm looking right at them. I do not, and sometimes when I'm talking to someone, I can see someone coming up the side, and I'm not paying attention to them yet because I'm still talking to this person. If I had a phone, I would not be checking it if I'm talking to somebody. I've experienced that when I'm talking to someone, and in the middle of a sentence, sometimes I don't even be crying. You know, this has happened before. I'm talking to a priest and I'm crying, and I'm like, really? He was like, oh, keep going. He's shutting it off. Like, what? Like, it totally disrupts the relational aspect of what needs to be happening in this exchange that we have. If we're at dinner, be at dinner with those people. I'm going on pilgrimage. I'm taking a group of girls, 20 girls from our high school on pilgrimage. Mostly from our high school. There's also from Trinity and Carroll, a couple girls coming. And one of the rules, whenever I take them anywhere, we had a 3-day retreat in the fall, a 1-day retreat in the spring, and now we're going on a pilgrimage for 5 days to Wisconsin. And at Marion, there's several Marion national shrines up there. I'm really looking forward to the trip. But one of the rules is they may not be on their phones during the trip, and they learn how to do that. Our trip is relational. We're forming sisterly relationships, and we're forming relationships with our Heavenly Mother. That's what we're working on, our spiritual relationships and our human relationships. It's important. These girls they don't know how. I'm part of the Handmaids group that I'm a formational group for girls that we're doing at Capon, and our other high schools too. I'm the one doing it at Capon. One of the things I told the girls is, if you join this group, I will teach you how to have healthy relationships with other girls your age that's free from drama and comparison and full of trust and sisterly relationship. Their jaws dropped. They were like, is that even possible? It's not modeled for them anywhere, right? They need to learn how to do this. And the absence of technology and being fully present to the person is part of it. They need to experience that because they don't at home or anywhere. You can ask middle schoolers, have you ever experienced, I give middle school retreats sometimes, and I'll ask them, have you ever experienced where you come home, you're really excited to tell your mom or dad something, and they say just a minute while they're on their phone, and their phone is between you and them? All of them. Yes. Yes. How does that make you feel? Unimportant, second-rate, unloved. You know, I might be theirs in a minute, but in that moment I feel rejected. Right? We need these human relationships. Human, real is more important than the virtual. We need to practice this. So we also, this is awesome for looking at building relationships, because remember, pornography tears down relationships. Sexual revolution tears down relationships. Aristotle described 3 types of relationships. The first is useful, where the bond is the common benefit to the friendship. It ends when the usefulness or need no longer exists. This is not necessarily a bad friendship. Okay? If I take my car in to get the tires fixed, I'm going to want to be friendly with the guy who's fixing my tires, because it's good for us to be able to work together. Secretaries at school, you know, there are people we need to be friends with, because it's helpful for us to be friendly with each other and to respect each other while we work together. All right, so it's not necessarily a bad friendship, but what's harmful is if I think this is more than it is, because the friendship does end, the friendliness ends when we no longer need each other. If I think it's more than that, and it actually is a friendship of use, then I get hurt. And this is something I tell the girls, because they're like, that's, you know, it answers so many questions, like, I always thought there was something wrong with me. But I had a useful friendship. You know, we were friends because we were on the same team, or, you know, whatever. I mean, I might have hoped for more, but it's not because there was something wrong with me. It's because the friendship was different than I thought it was. Then there's pleasant friendship. The bond is mutually enjoyed, but if our tastes or activities change, you know, I'm not interested in the same things I was when I was in middle school. So that's when we see friendships drift apart. During middle school, high school, a lot of that happens because the person, their interests change. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. That doesn't mean you're rejected. It just means that your friendship was based on pleasure, okay? But the virtuous friendship, I will the good for you. This is unconditional. It depends on our relationship with our Lord. It's modeled after his love for us. This is lasting friendship. And this is the highest friendship. This is what we all want. This is what we all seek. Now, where does this come with pornography? With pornography, we are trained in the bad kind, abusive, useful friendship. It's not actually even friendship, it's just use. It's objectifying. And we're tricked into thinking that this is somehow a relationship or a friendship. We're being robbed of all 3 of these in their purest form. That's what pornography teaches us, to use people as objects instead of going to this higher form of actually being with a person. So we need to go back to the foundations of friendship and help our young people, and us too. We need to be looking at our friendships. You know, do I have? What type of friend am I to others? What are my expectations of my friends? Do my children, grandchildren, do they see this in me? Do I model friendship for them? Can they see that and see what it looks like to have good friendships? Because if they don't see it in you, where are they going to see it? It's not modeled anywhere else. Good friendship. I correct the students on that sometimes. I'm like, what is this? You know, it's like you treat your friends worse than you treat your enemies, you know, and you think that's good, you know? You have to laugh it off even though you hurt each other all the time. I mean, there's room for banter and teasing and all of that, but some of the stuff they do is really hurtful to each other, and they have to pretend like it doesn't hurt. Because that's what is modeled for them, is not healthy friendship. Okay, so what is this? So that's kind of the relationship aspect. Being mindful, thinking and choosing versus feeling an impulse. Pornography, internet, it trains us to act on feelings and impulse rather than to think and choose. The going rate of children and adolescents, I feel, I do. I feel, I follow. Whereas what we want, I feel, I think, I decide. That's what we need. So we help them with that because they're not naturally going to go. That's what parents do, right? Like, and don't even, you know, they're, okay, here's this, and only take one. And when they're reaching for the second, you know, we anticipate them acting on impulse, acting on feeling. We help them to activate their thinking part of their brain. So we're not actually nagging, we're actually helping them to develop the thinking part of their brain because it's not developed. It doesn't develop until they get into their 20s. So young people need help to think. We talked about this, passively receiving a sexualized culture. So when we see something, identifying it, thinking, choosing to reject it, instead of just passively letting it just enter and sit there. Deep versus surface desires. This is also a part of being mindful, and I love this because it's positive. Some teenagers think, young people think, I can't ever do what I want to do. You've probably heard that accusation. You don't ever let me do what I want to do. Well, actually, what we're doing is helping the young people to do what they really deeply want. The problem is we tend to, and the internet and pornography teaches us to act solely on surface desires, which are just emotion-based, and they're on the surface, and they don't get into the really the deep who we are as a person. What are our deepest desires? To be loved, to love, to follow my vocation, to be fulfilled in life. Those are my deepest desires. If I can get in touch with that, and I do a lot of work with the teenagers to help, we do journaling and searching for that. And like, it can't be a head thing. Okay, I know I want to be loved. Sister says I want to be loved. I know it's true. You have to find it within your own heart. Where is my desire to be loved? Can I find that within myself? And so we spend time in the chapel for them to explore that, to try to find it and to journal. What does it look like? Write about that desire that you have to be loved, to be in relationship, to have that virtuous friendship that Aristotle talks about. And then, if you can get in touch with that, we need to get in touch with that regularly. Because everything on advertisements and billboards and all that, it's all about living by our surface desires. What I feel like, what's comfortable. So if I'm in touch with my deeper desires, and this vocation would be in my deeper desires, right? My being faithful to my vocation in life, or preparing for my vocation in life. That resides with my deep desires. If I see something or I'm presented with a choice, if it goes against those deeper desires, I say no to that because it's robbing me of my deeper desire. It's not so much about not getting what I want. It's about not allowing this impulse to rob me of something that I really want more deeply. So it's really about a yes instead of a no. But we can't see it as a yes instead of a no if we don't even know that exists within ourselves. We're not being trained or formed in living on a deep level. So that's part of this formation too. I mean, see, this is so exciting, to be living on this level of deep personhood and fulfillment in life. And then we can more easily see pornography for the empty darkness that it is. And teenagers get angry. They're like, what? Why did I allow this in my life? And I tell you what their biggest anger is, why hasn't anyone helped me before? Why hasn't anyone ever told me about this before? And nobody has. Except sometimes they'll get, don't look at that, it's bad for you. Well, what is that? They don't really understand. They just know I'm bad if I look at it. But they don't understand how the attraction works and my deep desires, surface desires, how, activating my thinking part of the brain, all of this. They don't understand all of that. They're not really helped. They're just told it's bad if you do it. But they're not really helped. Why hasn't anyone ever really helped me before? Not just told me it was bad. If even that. Some people have never even mentioned the word, even once they've only heard the word from their peers. So that's the mindfulness part. Spiritually enriched, man cannot live without love. That's a quote from John Paul II. Man cannot live without love. So we develop these deep desires. Being able to identify guilt versus shame, being able to own our behavior in a safe and confident way, not identifying my behavior with my identity, like I talked about before. We fear judgment, but when we reveal our heart to our Lord, we always receive love and mercy. not judgment. I mean, haven't you experienced that before when you actually like really, I mean, there's this fear, right, of confessing or revealing this, allowing our Lord to touch a part or looking at it with our Lord. There's this fear. That's from the devil. Whenever we reveal a weakness or a darkness in our heart, whenever we reveal that to our Lord, always, always the response is love and mercy. Never condemnation. Never, ever condemnation. Always love and mercy. He heals us. He helps us. He loves us. He brings light into our darkness. That's what he does. So just a note on the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is good, okay? You're like, oh, I feel so guilty. You know why you feel guilty? It's because you're guilty. There's nothing wrong with that. So what does guilt do? I mean, St. Ignatius talks about this. I love his rules of discernment. And if you can come on June 13th and 14th, we'll put a lot of this into the context of Ignatius' rules of discernment to help us, our young people, when we're tempted to give in to our surface desires as a way to escape or whatever. His rules of discernment help us to stand strong. So this guilt, he says that when we are inclined towards sin, the good angel or the good spirit acts in a way that bites our consciences to help us to reject that, to help us to see it for what it is, that it's not good for me. So guilt is good. It's a feeling about an action, about what I did or what I'm thinking about doing. It's not about myself, who I am, it's about the act. It's from God. We hear it from our consciences. It helps us to recognize our sin. It helps us to repent and to change. Shame, however, is an emotion. It makes us believe that we are bad because of what we've done. It affects our sense of identity. We think we deserve rejection. The devil uses it to make us feel defeated, also to make us not confess, not to get in the light. He wants us to hide. Makes us want to hide in darkness, and there is no turning back. This is what Adam and Eve experienced when they hid in shame. They were ashamed, right? Shame is not good. So this also, this has really informed me a lot in the language that I use in the classroom when I discipline. I want to use the language of guilt and not shame. So I'm very careful with how I talk to my students. You know, your behavior, your choice, you're still good, you're amazing, you're beautiful, all right? But we need to talk about what you did. You own your behavior. And it's awesome. When I taught third grade, focusing on this and the difference in language, we went from, student, I see a student, you might experience this in your families, they made a mess with the markers. Cody, you made a mess with the markers, come clean up. It wasn't me. You know what? That's shame. That's the voice of shame. I can't admit what I did. So it's the voice of shame, fear, hiding. It's a reaction. He's not necessarily conscientiously choosing to lie. He's experiencing shame and he cannot own his behavior. He's acting in kind of self-defense. I'm not saying it's good that he's doing this. I'm just saying there's a lot more to it than just a simple devious lie. I mean, there is that possibility too, okay? But oftentimes, especially with younger ones, and if it's just this reaction, it's shame that's talking. So I need to help form my students in guilt instead of shame. So we would talk about owning your behavior. So I would ask them, like, okay, there's a lot of things that aren't put away. Would you please, I would tell them ahead of time, you're not going to get punished for this. You're not going to get a consequence. I just need, for your good, I need you to raise your hand and own it. Would you please, if you contributed to this, would you just raise your hand? Several hands go up. That is awesome. Most adults can't do what you just did. That's great. You just owned your behavior, and now you have some freedom from it. Sometimes I would tell them, we're going to have a consequence for this. I want you to own it. I want you to have confidence in owning it, and I want you to hold your head high and take your consequence and make up for what you did. Okay, so these are kind of the steps that we go through, and we went from students not admitting things to pretty much most of the class. If they did something, they could admit it. Walking the line at recess was the common kind of thing that we did at St. Catherine of Siena, where I was most recently teaching third grade. It was this kind of universal, so the teacher on duty could monitor that, no matter if it was her child or someone else's child. They could just know that, okay, you have 5 minutes, you have 2 minutes, or whatever, and so that was just kind of common. Went from students not wanting to walk the line because they were so worried about what others thought of them, which nobody else on the playground even cares. They're just playing. They're just glad they're not on the line. But you feel that's shame, right? Everyone's looking at me. They're thinking bad things about me, my identity. is different because of what I did, to by the end of the year, students walking the line with no problem, just kind of like, I did something, I'm making it up, no problem, they're walking the line, they're not so worried about what other people are thinking of them. This is very healthy, okay, to be able to move from shame to guilt. Pornography rips this apart, okay? Pornography very much operates on the shame part of it. Shame also rips apart relationship. If I'm in shame, I'm hiding. Shame, you can see how this would rip apart marriage if one or the other spouse is living in shame because of a pornography habit. If you're living in that world, how in the world are you going to share your person with your spouse? You can't. You can't. Okay. Safeguarding the home. Would you let strangers in your house? I remember when we were out, my parents, every single time we got back from anything, my mom in particular, my dad wasn't so interested, but my mom's, who'd you see, where'd you go, anything happen, any drama, are your friends all getting along, anyone do anything, or say anything that, was important or whatever, okay, so like the whole shebang, you had to tell mom. Well, guess what? Every single time a child is on an internet-enabled device, they are out of your home. You see anyone weird, anything happen, any drama? How are you? What'd you see? Where'd you go? Are our children being asked this every single time? Every single time they're on a device. I can tell you they're not. I know they're not. Okay? Just because it's in your home, it doesn't mean that it's safe. Basically, instead of them going out into the world to encounter the world's coming into your home. We need to know that this is what's happening. So we want to delay exposure for the young ones in our homes. So how do we do that? Filters, parental controls, limited access, or I would advise no access to the App Store. Do not let the children have a password or even free apps. Doesn't matter. You control what they can and cannot download, and you set those apps up and make it so that they can't access those controls. I have on the resources page, there's a website that does it for, they pretty much tell you this is how you do that. It's an awesome website. I'll show it to you here in just a minute. Turn off online access and games, and etc. Limit screen time. Okay. I think I'm going to, the rest of this, I could go over it with you, but I think a lot of it you can read and get the point on your own. I'm going to show you some resources. I should have had these called up already, but hopefully. Dusty, is this hooked up to Wi-Fi?
It should be.
Okay. All right. I'm going to just call up a couple things here. So there's, let me hand out this resources page for you, and we'll go through this. Okay. So there are a few. This first page are resources for parents of teens. These are vetted resources. So there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of different options. These are my favorites out of looking at a lot of what's out there. The first three are books that are available through Amazon. They are all Catholic in nature. Actually, the first one, there's one on my phone. That one is not Catholic, but it is faith friendly. And that one has to do more with sending nude photos, which is, it's scary how many of, I work mainly with the girls. It's scary that almost all of them have been propositioned to send photos. And a lot of them give in and just because they feel like a nerd if they don't, because it seems like everyone's doing it. And it's pretty common for kids who are dating to know what they look like naked before they even go out on the first date. I mean, it's just, it's sick, but it's out there. So that's what this first book specifically addresses, is that whole phenomenon of, and they don't say, it used to be called sexting. It's not sexting anymore because they don't use text messaging to do it. They use Snapchat and Instagram and things like that to do it. So moving further down on the backside, filtering and accountability software. This is like to safeguard your home and all of that. Look at the second one down, it's called Bark. That's amazing. There's filtering and accountability which we need to have. I mean, it's not an option. It's not a recommendation. It's a need. Every single person using internet-enabled devices should have filtering, not just filtering, but accountability. Because filtering, there's, I haven't looked up these stats in a while, but there was, I think it's 100 billion pornography websites that are out there.
100 billion?
Yeah. And if you, a good filter filters out about 90%. Like a really good filter will filter out about 90%. That's still, now maybe it's I want to say it's 100 billion. It's in the billions. Okay, I haven't looked up the specific stats. It's in the billions. Even with the best filter, you're still looking at hundreds of thousands of sites that are getting in. Okay, so you need more than a filter. You do need a filter because you're reducing it from billion to 100,000. Okay, so you need that filter, but you also need accountability software, which tells you where the child's been browsing, and it fosters conversation. Okay, regular conversation. See this relationship coming back into it again? It's all about relationship. Your relationship is necessary with this. It cannot be passive. Impossible for this to be passively monitored. Okay, which is amazing because what I've seen is children who are in recovery from porn addiction have a closer relationship to their parents than what they did before. Because relationship is so key, and if the parents are on board, it's a discovery of a relationship that should have been there all the time. And the parents thought it was there. It's like, oh, well, we talk, but do you really talk about what's, like, can you get your child to talk about what they're really experiencing, what they're really going through? They're hesitant to do that for a lot of reasons. So this Bark, there's so much that filtering and accountability software can do. The apps that they have on their phones are where the biggest danger is, and a lot of the filtering and accountability software, the apps can get around that. Bark monitors apps, and what Bark does is it looks for any kind of bullying, self-harm, and sexual propositioning, either way, going in or out. And that's what it looks for, and it's amazing. They just look for certain language or types of expressions or patterns, and that's the only time you get an alert is when it says your son, and it's a real-time alert. Like as soon as they send this message or receive a message via their social media, their apps, it says they just sent this, it looks like this, and it has a tip. If your child is currently being tempted to self-harm, here's, as a parent, a way to enter that conversation in a way that's not threatening or in a way that's helpful, what your child might need and all that. So it's really good. Okay, there are a lot, people that I respect are very impressed with what Bark does. Now it doesn't, as far as I know, it doesn't come with a filter or anything. It's just a way to alert you if there's something alarming that's going through on social media. Okay, this Protect Young Eyes I think is amazing. So it's protectyoungeyes.com. It's in your resource packet. And you just click on this apps thing. So let's click on the apps button. And it takes you to a list. These are close to all the apps that are popular with young people, grade school through college. All of the ones that are most popular on here, and and a lot of these you probably have never heard of, some of them you have heard of. And with each one of these, let's see, we'll just do Instagram for now just because it's on here. Even Musical.ly is on here. That's very popular with younger kids. Is it safe? You know, what is it? It tells you what it is, how it works, what the App Store advertises it as, whether that's accurate. What do parents need to know? What is possible for children to do on this app, and what are they actually doing on this app? And this one, Instagram, is huge. So he has a lot of information on this one. And parental controls, where they are, how to set them. If it's complicated, he'll have screenshots on here about where exactly you go to get parental controls. He'll tell you if the parental controls work on this app. And at the end, he will also, bottom line, is it safe or not? And he's honest. He's not just anti-technology. He's about informing parents. And he'll go, okay, honest, bottom line, this app is okay if the parental controls are on. Bottom line, this app is okay right now, but there's potential for harm, but we haven't seen that any predators are on this app yet. But here's an opening that they could be. You know, so it's very, very good. And he does all this so you don't have to. You don't have to be in your kid's phone trying to figure out what they have, what they don't have. It also has like apps that hide apps and all of that. That's all on this Protect Young Eyes. Moving forward a little bit in your packet, the books used in presentation, that's when I do my 2-day presentation. I don't have time to read you any stories during 1 hour. But these are all really, really good books that basically tap into relational aspects of things, owning your behavior, unconditional love of our Lord, love and mercy, that kind of thing. That's what's emphasized in these books. And I use these books with all ages. So the two first books listed are picture books. I use those with adults, and they're riveted. So it's not, even though it's a picture book, it doesn't mean you can't use it with older ones. Spiritual reading, this is more like on an adult level, spiritual reading for having more of a sense of identity, love, discernment, relationship with our Lord. Healing is also included in that. Resources directly to Battle for News. I have some samples of these. Good pictures, bad pictures. Buy the book. Okay? Each one of you, I don't say that very often. I like to give options and, oh, this is recommended, you know, whatever. This is essential, really, for every family that has children. Starting whenever a child is on any kind of internet-enabled device, or is staying over at someone's house that has one, or is going to grandma and grandpa's house, or whatever, who has, you know, because your child is only safe as the least protected house that they ever stay at. Okay? This tells them what to do. This book, what I did was I took this book and I made it into a lesson plan format for grade school, and that's in the PowerPoint that I didn't go over with you, but it's basically a step-by-step what to tell children. When I went through this with my third graders, I asked them, so hey, here's the drill. This is real basic, but there's no reason we can't do this in all of our grade schools. After I've kind of taught them the lesson, then I said, okay, well, let's practice. Pretend you're on your mom's iPhone. Okay, like they know what that feels like because they've all done it. So they're all holding your iPhones. Picture like 28 third graders sitting on the floor, and I'm in a chair. And they're all like, okay, something bad comes on the phone, what do you do? All 28, shut their eyes and look away, right? You do not tell them to shut it off, don't look for the red X on the, or whatever, none of that. Just shut your eyes and look away. That's the first step immediately. You want them to do that. The longer they look at the screen, the longer that image, the deeper that image goes, the more they see, the longer it'll take them to forget. Okay, immediately, look away. Then what? Flip it over, or do something if it's a tablet, if it's a laptop, you close it, or whatever. Do something to where you can't see the screen before you look again. Okay, so I put it face down. This is what they do with an iPhone. That's second step. Step 1, step 2, step 3, mom, dad, there's something bad on this. You want mom and dad to see it. Then mom and dad knows what to do with it. Okay? Now, what is something bad on the phone? I had to be very generic because I did not have parent permission to talk to them about anything explicit. So I had one student who reported me, there's something bad on my computer. I'm like, great, I hardly ever use computers in the classroom, but I had to for state something that we were doing. And I'm like, really? On this website for the, study for the state test, and so I went over it. It was an ad for an eye disease. There was an eyeball on there that had like pustules on it. That's bad. That makes me uncomfortable. I'm like, okay. I'm glad they told me, and we talked about it. And I was like, are you okay? I was like, I can't get rid of that. I would give you the option of doing an alternate assignment because you shouldn't have to look at things that make you uncomfortable. And she was like, no, I think I'm okay. I just wanted you to know. I'm like, thank you for telling me. Not you shouldn't have told me or that's not what I meant or whatever. I don't ever want them to think that they should discern whether they tell me. I want them to tell me anytime they're uncomfortable, right? And so I affirm them for telling me. There's something bad on this. Well, then I asked them, if you're at school, you tell the teacher. If you're at home, you tell whichever adult's taking care of you. Even if that adult perhaps has a problem with pornography, they're not going to want this 8-year-old to be looking at pornography, so they're still going to handle it. So I asked them, if you tell an adult, will you be in trouble? And their instinct response was to say yes. Do you see why they aren't telling? Something bad came on. I should have known better. I should have clicked. And I asked them, why don't you tell? I should have known better. I shouldn't have clicked on it. I should have, somehow it's my fault. One of them said, my parents are supposed to protect me. I don't want them to know I saw something I wasn't supposed to tell. They'll feel bad. There's all kinds of reasons they don't talk. Or I'll be in trouble. They'll take my device away. They'll think I can't handle it and all of this. Okay, well, think again. Are you going to be in trouble? They thought about it and then they were like, no, they'll be proud of me because I did the right thing. But they had to be told that. That's what this Good Pictures, Bad Pictures does. It tells them, I'll be proud of you if you talk to me. It's the right thing to do. Let's talk about it. They don't know that they should talk about it, and they're not talking about it. There's Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior for kids younger than kindergarten. So it has a little bit different language in it. Wonderfully Made Babies. If you don't talk to children about their sexuality and how babies are made, basically whoever talks to them first is who they're going to go back to when they have questions. So if they hear it first from Google, they're going to go back to Google. You don't want them going to Google for answers about sexual things. Okay, so unfortunately, it's kind of like a race. This is, Archbishop Chaput approved this. It's Catholic, it's based on theology of the body for kids. Some people ask, is this too much? Are they going to be like sexualized or whatever? I guarantee you, if a mom or dad is talking to their child about how babies are made, that is not arousing to the child. Okay? It's a little bit embarrassing. It's not going to sexualize them. It's the exact appropriate context for them to learn it. It's a very safe, non-arousing context. Okay? So there's, in your reference packet, I have a few other resources that are here just as samples. I'm running just a couple minutes over, so make sure there's nothing else in here that I need to tell you. These, the last 2 pages are conversation guides. The first one is the initial conversation for so many. This is for adolescents, how to talk to them. And then the last page is before exposure. So this is basically kind of a summary of the Good Pictures, Bad Pictures format of talking to a child. And then on the very back, this is from teenagers that I have taught who have said, this is what makes talking to my parents difficult. This is a summary of what they've said, and so this might be helpful. And they said, because I challenged them to initiate a conversation with their parents about whatever they needed help with, and they said that if I were to send this out to parents, if they knew that their parents knew these things going into this conversation, they would be much more likely to start the conversation. So I sent this out in an email to the parents, and then asked the child to talk to the parents. So that's what I have for you. Let's end with the glory be, and then I'll let you go to lunch, and I'll leave this out so you can take a look at it over your grace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Immaculate Heart of Mary, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. If I could just, one last, the front page, the Fortify program, adolescent and older. This is amazing. This is what I use with teenagers to help them through recovery. It's the best that's out there. It's chaste. It's faith-friendly. It's not faith-based, but it's faith-friendly. It's amazing. They have videos. It's made for young people. It's engaging videos and real conversations, and it takes them through a 9-week course of recovery, and it's very, very effective. So, especially for teenagers and adults and all of that, highly, highly recommend that. Okay? All right. Thanks. I'll let you go now.
Thank you, Sister. Thank you.